Studios in West London is the oldest continuously running film studio in the world, having originally opened in 1902. The studios are perhaps still best known for the comedy films produced there in the 1940s and 50s, many of which are still cherished today as national screen treasures. Celebrated film producer Sir Michael Balcon took over the studios in 1938, employing documentary filmmakers to create more realistic war films, and became the first producer to give comedies higher production values. Consequently, the late 40s and 50s saw an explosion of Ealing's hallmark black comedies, satirising British life and society at the time, which was going through a period of rapid change. These Ealing comedy classics include Whiskey Galore, Kind Hearts and Coronets, The Lady Killers, The Lavender Hill Mob, and The Man in the White Suit. At its peak, 56 film crews used the studios as a base for location filming of dramas, documentaries and other programmes. One of the unusual things about Ealing Studios was that Balcon built a superb team of professionals who were continuously employed there, one of whom was Roy Gough. Roy worked as a stills photographer at Ealing Studios during the peak of its success between 1943 and 1955, photographing some of the biggest stars of British and international cinema. Born in Shepherd's Bush, West London in 1913, Roy moved with his family to Ealing in the mid-1930s. After a period of illness, he went to Ealing School of Art in 1938 to study commercial art design, but ended up becoming the only student on the photography course, which had not long been taught there. Soon becoming very interested in photography, he bought himself a little Ensign Selfix folding camera, but at college used large cameras on stands and plate cameras, because photography in those days was mostly studio-based with artificial lighting. He found himself directed into wartime work as a printer at Ealing Studios, soon progressing to becoming a photographer, a job he did from 1943 to 1955. Roy was variously employed as a unit, publicity and portrait photographer. His job involved providing a stills photographic service, which included taking many different sorts of pictures in a range of settings, including portrait work of film stars, taking the pictures that were displayed outside cinemas to promote the films, and behind-the-scenes photography, both on set at the studios and out on location all around the UK and overseas. Another of Roy's tasks was to supply newspapers and magazines with pictures of the stars, taking what was known as personality photographs. He would visit film stars at home, photographing them with their families and hobbies, at work or on holiday. As he explained,
doing all the things that you or I do. Their offset lives vastly interest the viewing cinema public, hence at-home photography. And that means, strangely enough, rather unusual people doing very ordinary things. Here is Peter Ustinov rolling up the socks of his small son before they both go paddling. For at-home interiors, I use a combination of available light and bounced electronic flash. This gives that soft north light quality beloved of TV commercial producers.
Roy often spoke of spotting star potential, pointing out that most of them have that little touch of something extra.
I find it very interesting to try and spot this in a young artiste who comes to the studio for perhaps her first and very small part. There was a young girl in The Man in the White Suit. She had just one line to say to Alec Guinness, "Thank you very much." She had a strange, haunting charm. I took several candid shots of her. It was no surprise to me that Audrey Hepburn made the grade.
Roy described movie stills photography of the 1940s and 50s like this.
The stills tended to be very posed, although this was a period when Picture Post and papers like it were doing very vital action photography. It was a rigid thing. They set up the scene and then the actor came into the studio. It was a bit like going to the dentist. The exterior sets were built in the studio, but Ealing did pioneer location photography. Once we were shooting with director Dougie Slocum and it poured with rain. And somebody said, what a pity they hadn't finished the pub scene back in the studio. Otherwise we could whip back there and shoot it. Now we were in a pub at the time. So Dougie said, well, let's shoot it here. So we shot a pub scene in a real pub.
Photography on location could present physical challenges, such as when Roy was shooting a character series on actor Anthony Stell, wading shoulder deep in a tropical mangrove swamp. The actor was 6 foot tall, whereas Roy was only just over 5'7", so he had to balance on his toes to keep his head and camera above the water. Roy's memories also give us an insight into film workers' unions at the time.
The union was fairly strong. When we were shooting Whiskey Galore, one morning they forgot to bring out the milk and somebody said, "A cup of tea without milk is not tea within my understanding of my rights as a union member." He was practically going to lay down his tools. But there was an islander standing by who said, "Is it milk you're wanting?" And he went to the next field and milked a cow. So then they were arguing about whether this was acceptable as milk.
Roy wasn't without criticism of the hierarchical structures in place at Ealing Studios under Sir Michael Balcon.
It was very male-orientated. And another thing I criticise Ealing for is the class stereotypes. If there was a taxi driver, it was always the same old actor. You know, "Here you are, Governor. Thanks, Governor." The market changed, and I don't think Balcon did.
Roy reflected on the changes of movie portraiture over the period in which he was working as a stills photographer. Speaking in 1973, he said,
"Portraiture has, and still does, play a part in selling a product based so much on personalities. Here is a portrait I took around 15 years ago of that great artiste Sir Alec Guinness, The Scapegoat. It was taken at the MGM Still Studio, and the session cost not only the time of a valuable artiste, but also that of hairdressers and makeup, props and electricians, studio hire, and even my own pittance."
Roy noted that by the 1960s, film star portraiture became much less formally structured and composed, moving out of the studio onto the streets and other informal settings. In 1958, Roy met and fell instantly in love with Beryl Hewson Booth, who was working as the continuity girl on the set of Nowhere to Go, and the pair were married in 1960. The role of continuity girl was to watch filming and record minute details of a take in order to avoid discrepancies and facilitate editing. Beryl was reputed to be exceptionally good at her job, and after getting married, they went into business together, trading as Camera Continuity Limited, most famously working on cult TV series The Prisoner. After leaving Ealing Studios in 1955, Roy went on to become publicity photographer at Elstree Studios, leaving in 1964 to work as a freelance photographer on popular television series and entertainment programmes which attracted huge ratings. It seems people loved and trusted Roy. Their comments and messages share private jokes and affection, and his photography captured stars of this golden era of film in a light they were often rarely seen, relaxing, laughing, chatting. Gunnersbury Park Museum was honoured to receive his archive from Beryl after Roy sadly passed away from a stroke in 2002. We are delighted to have had support from the Esme Fairbairn Trust and Studio Canal to be able to digitise, exhibit and share his photography with new audiences. There is no doubt that as long as Ealing films hold a place in our hearts, Roy Gough will live on through his photography.